Well, hello again into another episode of No Lids, No Limits with Kin and Arek. Hey, Kin.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great, especially that we have some celebrations about the coffee as well.
Oh, yes, we were making this recording on, I just discovered this morning, the National Coffee Day. So hope everyone enjoys your coffee as you're listening to this podcast. So
There you go.
I'm Kin. I'm from Canada with about 30 years of manufacturing operations experience. And Eric, about yourself?
Yep, and my name is Arek. I'm your fellow Eastern European, work with distributors and EMSs over 20 years here in Poland and also in the area surroundings. So, Kin, what are we talking about today, my friend?
Well, Arek, you've been talking about some new customers recently with some of your work. I'm curious to hear about how do you and work with customers to ensure they have a great experience working with the EMS providers.
Yeah. Thank you for that question, Ken. I would say, EMS is very uneasy field for keeping the customers happy and keeping them with you. It's one of the special fields that the customer quickly can shift from one to another when it goes, to the price and the PPV and all that thing. So yeah, we're trying to make the customers happy during all the acquisition process and then keeping them constantly with us on the same level of engagement and going there so that as we spoke before, it's not a linear phase, but it's more of a infinity loop as you.
I think fundamentally, Eric, do you see customers in the EMS always looking for the lowest price or the fastest delivery? Or is there more to that?
Yeah, of course, there is more to that. I would say this is the basis, the lowest price and the fast delivery. It's like the given, right? If the customer is really seeing a different price somewhere else and the level, this extra ingredient that you're giving them is not justifying staying with you, then they will be gone. So yeah, of course, you just need to show a little bit different value, and it starts from the very beginning from quoting, right?
Mhm.
Into this high mix, low volume business. There is more and more coming into this field. And then what is the most important is the pace of your quote, right? If you're not responding quickly enough, then the business is already with someone else. And even you might have the best price later on, but they already make their decision. The NPI is already on a phase with someone else and you're stuck with that. So I would say today, thanks to the digitalization and all the tools that we have, we're able to improve the pace and the quality of the quote. Of course, you're always gonna need to talk to your sources and try to make your best parts. From the Pareto rule, the most important one, an expensive one, a little bit lower later on. But the very first quotes, very first response is really important to the customer.
Yeah. What about the that's in the quotation part? In terms of once the customer or the prospect, I should say, becomes a
Mhm.
customer, what are some of the things that is important to make sure they stay as your customer?
Yeah, and again, it also starts with a quote. It's really the ease of doing business with you, right? So not only you want to make it as easy as possible for your customer to get the quote on time with the right price, with all his feedback to you, but also you want to then keep him and keep the dialogue open and really deliver what you can. So if you look at the EMSs, there's not so much difference on the process. It really comes down to what you are able to give them, especially as your treatment, and how are you following with the customer. So it's very important to always check with your customer what is the satisfaction level. So okay, we can talk about NPS, but in general it just goes to the loyalty of the customer and what is it based on. The customer needs to feel being treated in a special way, that their business is important to you as EMS and you're putting enough effort. And then again, the digitalization and the whole AI that we talked about before comes into place and helps out, because if we're looking at high mix low volume and many customers from many different fields and everybody wants to feel special, how do you do it? You can't always add more people and invest into your stuff, but you use the digitalization tool for that to keep the customer happy, but also keep him knowledgeable about his product and what is the ongoing phase of that and how are you moving forward with it.
What you talk about keeping the customer happy? Obviously, I think every EMS want to try to keep the customer happy. I've been on the other side of the table, working with a lot of OEMs and shopping around and moving the business from one EMS to another. Keeping me happy as the sort of the gatekeeper front man is not necessarily the only factor. What do you think would be some of the factors that really help to engage the customer to keep them loyal so that they keep bringing you business over and over again?
Yeah, I would say number one priority for me in any kind of business and the approach that I have is trust. The customer really needs to trust you that you're taking a good care of the product. And then with the trust comes also quality of how you are delivering the goods to the customer and that you're keeping your word as you promised you're delivering. So I would say trust, loyalty, quality level, and the kind of commitment that they see. These are the most important factors. Not all of them you can measure, of course, which is a little bit unfortunate. But I believe you can be sure that if you are pressing the right buttons on those angles, then definitely you are staying with that customer for a longer period and not.
Yeah, what are some of the things that you feel would be ways or strategies to really help build the trust? Because trust is very tough. It takes years usually to establish trust and seconds to destroy it, as they say.
Yes.
What are some of the things that really can help the EMSs can focus on to work on to build that trust?
Yeah, well, the good thing is most of the EMSs that are already operating, they have their own reputation. So you already built something. Okay, you can burn it in a second, as we discussed. But if you already have a good reputation on the market, that's also easier for you to enter to another customer because you are basing on that. So a lot of those EMSs are working also on the relation that they already established for the other customers, that the loyalty that they built with someone else is given in the industry and then they can capitalize on that.
One of the things that I feel is very important when it comes to building trust with the for EMS is really focusing on being transparent and clear.
Mhm.
I think those are the two things that I have practiced and I look for when it comes to my vendors. If they're always kind of seeming to hide things, if the quotation isn't really open and clear on what it's going to cost me as on the OEM side, or if I'm not exhibiting that to my client, if I'm working on the EMS side, I think the lack of transparency seems to always destroy trust very quickly. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree fully. This is something that EMS really needs to look into and make sure that it's visible. It's also needed from the customer to be a little bit more transparent and be more open with the information that they're sharing. Do you agree on that?
Yes, here's an interesting perspective. For years in the electronics industry, in our industry, there's a unique situation which is somewhat different than, let's say, if you're in the service industry, particularly, or construction or anything else, which is the degree of transparency, is quite high when it comes to component pricing. And we know that component pricing typically is 80, 90% of your cost of manufacturing that product. So being so transparent and with most of these components being more of a commodity item, I mean, how are EMSs able to compete one over the other? I'm curious to see, is there anything we can practice there to increase the transparency yet still preserving the degree of the price structure that we disclose to our customers?
Yeah, I mean, it also puts the angle of the EMS really having a good relation with all the distributors and with the suppliers and the vendors, right? So the OEM and ODM can really capitalize on their relation and their purchasing power that they can deliver a little bit better price in that matter as well. But yeah, if we're looking only at the cost, then this angle is really limited. So it's everything, all the services that you deliver on top and the quality of the services that you deliver on top. This is what matters and this is what builds loyalty. Because if we would base everything on the material, then yeah, this is pure EMS business from the days before where you can switch immediately to someone else and that's it. So and we really should be looking at business from the long-term perspective and the partnership because it makes sense for both parties, right? If you're going to be jumping from one company to another every 6 months, every, I don't know, 18 months, then it's not going to be good for your business, and it's not going to be the same quality for your business, which means different quality for the end customer with your product on the shelf. So I would say the longer that we can stay together, the better.
Another word that I want to bring into this conversation is a term called value. Is
Mm.
the customer getting good value? I think a good example, we had a chat about, buying a coffee, a nice coffee earlier, Arek. I don't mind paying the extra few dollars to go to a Starbucks and get a really good coffee rather than to my, the cheap McDonald's coffee. No offense to anyone who loves McDonald's coffee. As consumers are happy to pay more if we're getting
Mhm.
something better for what we
Mhm.
pay. That's value. That's not price. If everyone bought things on the best price, no one would be driving around in a Mercedes Benz or a BMW. Everyone would be buying a cheap Tata motor or whatever the cheapest car you could think of. I think when it comes to EMS, we see that, yet a lot of EMSs forget that it's not the lowest price that wins the bid. It's not the most amount of service or the best quality. Those are kind of given. It's really the value. What is the value that we as an EMS can provide to our customer? What is the value that the customer wants in the EMS partner? And not every customer wants the same degree of or the same values. And I think it's the search for that value which plays into the transparency that we talked about earlier, but as well as it being able to connect that value is another way that I see can really build trust.
I agree with you 100%. I had a conversation the other week with one potential customers, and they said it from the very beginning. We are really tough to work with because we are also limited with our information, with the forecast, with everything. And we just need someone that will be very agile. It's not pure pricing, pure cost that you're delivering, but what kind of resources are you able to drop in and really help out your customer, in the whole agile approach that we have today, because you
Yes.
can pivot from one thing to another, and you just need to stay on top of the game with that. The value, it's not only limited to material, but it's all of the other services that you're giving around.
And the agility, I think, is definitely one aspect that a lot of EMS providers forget that they have, because just because they have a lot of hard automation like your S&T machines and
Mhm.
AOIs, there's a whole software layer that is often forgotten in the EMS. And I think I've worked with a few companies now where rather than having a real focus on the equipment in our marketing talk, it's really about the way we do things on the side of a customer. As I'm looking for different EMS partners, I'm often not looking for, oh, can this machine place 042 or 0201
Mhm.
or whatever. It's more so, how do they go about dealing with, let's say, if they have a quality issue, how do they fix that? If they come across a particular manufacturing process which is totally new to them, how do they learn and adopt that and really build on it? There's a very tough, to source component on my bill of material. How do they go about attacking that from a supply chain perspective? To me, it's really about whether that EMS partner is able to solve the problem, which I cannot solve myself. Because if I can solve it myself, I could just have my own manufacturing plant, build it myself. It's because there's something limiting. And I think on your side, if you're standing on the EMS side, Arek, is when you look at me as a customer, how would you go about to find the way to see where my pain points are to really
Mhm.
help me as a way to build trust?
Exactly. How do we solve the problem of the customer? So, first of all, it needs to be addressed in a proper way to find the root causes and the analysis of that. And then we just show you what all of the possibility to solve the problem for you, right?
So, Arek, we talk a lot about trust and transparency, and
Mhm.
what are some of the I think key takeaways that we should leave with our audience at this point in terms of improving the customer experience journey? We touched on this idea of the infinity loop. The way I see it is, if you see the infinity loop, the shape of it, a customer starts as a prospect, as a lead,
Mhm.
and once they become a customer to the EMS has to really do the right thing and do the work to retain that customer, to keep them as a loyal customer. No manufacturing process is ever perfect. I've never worked with an EMS where there hasn't been a quality issue. So mistakes will happen, but the degree by which I think the EMS fixes the problem, addresses the real root cause of the issue, and not repeat the same quality defect or issue that results, is important to bring that customer back to become a sound customer. That journey is a very difficult journey to navigate. And you talked about some digital tools. You talked about certainly perspective, the mindsets. What is your advice to the EMS world out there of how they can improve that to really make the business profitable and sustainable?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, your observation that this journey is not linear, but it's an infinity loop. And we also need to always check where the customer is. And before the customer goes to a loop with someone else, we catch them and then we keep them with us. But I would say digitalization is very important today because we want to be able to service the customer very quickly. And again, you can only scale up to a certain level. So using those tools, giving fast feedback to your customer with the information, that's very important. Then agility, that you're being able to switch from one thing to another very quickly. That's also very important. Not fixating necessarily on your material. You're going to stand out in how quickly you're going to get the material, how quickly you're going to be able to give the customer the quote with the right price, of course, but not really the cost itself. So keeping the right transparency level with the customer, and then keeping the customer informed on how you're doing and what are you doing to make sure you understand the pain points of the customer, and then keeping those things on top of your projects.
Great perspective. Thank you, Arek. Our times are about up for this episode, but we love to hear more from our audience of where some of your pain points are, and how we can take this conversation to the next level to really dive into some of the specifics. I know it is kind of a general conversation at this point that we just opened up, but I know between Arek and myself, we have a lot of experience from our past to speak to a lot of the points. We touch on a lot of things that we didn't dive into, like the supply chain aspect, the quality assurance
Yes.
aspect, even the sales marketing aspect of this. And we're happy to share. So we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a comment and make sure you subscribe to our podcast for No Lids, No Limits. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you, Arek.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. See you on the next jar. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.